gentlemen. Hello, my name is Marilyn Alhus, and I am the Executive Director of the Airdrie Chamber of Commerce. I am pleased to be joined by Councillor Al Jones this evening, as the Airdrie Chamber of Commerce and the City of Airdrie are co-hosting for the first time the 2019 Banff Airdrie All Candidates Election Forum.
Thank you, Marilyn. And thank you to everyone here, as well as those at home watching online. This is a great opportunity for our business leaders and residents to get better informed on the issues facing Airdrie and how our candidates here tonight will address them if elected.
I'd also like to thank our sponsor for this evening, Calgary Real Estate Board, and all of the Chamber and City volunteers and staff for organizing this valuable platform for local business and our entire community to have a voice. I would now like to call upon a student from Ambition Performing Arts, Braxton Lee, age 9, to please sing our national anthem. If you could all please stand.
From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
9-year-old Braxton Lee, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so this evening we're going to be hearing from the candidates as they defend their party's platforms on the issues at hand and articulate their vision for our country under their party's leadership.
As the voice of local business and our over 500 members, the goal of the Airdrie Chamber's role for this forum is to encourage public dialogue and awareness of the priorities of Airdrie business. We will be asking 3 questions for candidates addressing issues outlined in Vote Prosperity, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce platform of business priorities for the next Canadian government.
Members of City Council will then be asking 3 questions they feel the federal government can have a direct impact on within our community.
I would now like to welcome our moderator for the evening, Shauna Feth. As Executive Director of the Alberta Business Family Institute at the University of Alberta School of Business, Shauna is a designated family enterprise advisor who was born into a 3rd-generation business family and has been actively and effectively promoting, educating, and supporting outreach programs for entrepreneurs and business families for over 11 years. A longtime community volunteer for many events and organizations, Shauna's our past chair of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce and a director of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Shauna Feth. Thank you, Shauna. The mic is yours.
All right. Thank you, Marilyn and Al. I'm honored to be here in Airdrie moderating tonight's event for the Airdrie Chamber of Commerce and the City of Airdrie. The Chamber has been advocating for business since 1900 and is responsible for seeking answers to questions and concerns of importance to you, their membership. Before we begin tonight's forum, I would like to take a moment to explain the rules to which all candidates have agreed. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement before we proceed into the question and answer portion of tonight's event. On the topics presented by the Chamber and City, each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to the question. Next, members of the public will have an opportunity to submit questions online, by text, or by using the forms provided. The details on how to submit your questions online is up on the screen behind me, I'm assuming, and on the tickets that were provided when you arrived. If you have a handwritten question and have yet to deposit it into the question box, please do so now. The box is at the entrance of the auditorium, and these questions will be randomly selected by volunteers, and each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer the question. And finally, each candidate will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement at the end of the program. This forum is structured in a manner that allows equal opportunity for all candidates to express their political views and plans for action and the effect that this will have on business and the community of Airdrie as a whole. None of the candidates have any advanced knowledge of tonight's questions, but they were given a list of potential topics that we will be discussing. For the audience, I ask that you refrain from participating in the forum in any other way than by being quiet observers. Hold your applause and comments until the end of the forum, please. If you have a cell phone with you, please ensure that the ringer is turned off right now so we're not interrupting anybody's answers. Invitations to participate in this forum were issued to all 5 of the political parties that have candidates in the Banff-Airdrie riding. 4 accepted. Now, without any further ado, I would like to invite the audience to welcoming the candidates for the Banff-Airdrie riding. Please rise when I call your name, and in alphabetical order they are Mr. Austin Mullins, representing the Green Party. Mr. Blake Richards, representing the Conservative Party. Ms. Nadine Wellwood, representing the People's Party of Canada. And Ms. Ann Wilson, representing the NDP Party. So, now that all the candidates have been introduced, let's begin. Before we get into the hot topics for the evening, each candidate will have 2 minutes to deliver an opening statement. Please come to the podium for your opening statements, and we'll begin in alphabetical order again with Mr. Austin Mullins of the Green Party.
Hi, my name is Austin Mullins, and I just want to say thank you to the Airdrie Chamber of Commerce and the City of Airdrie for hosting tonight's forum and all the volunteers that helped make it happen. I believe that democracy in action is democracy well done, and everyone here today is acting, and that is amazing. So I'll be turning 22 in just a few days. I currently work part-time as a server at a local restaurant in Canmore. In university, I studied political science with an additional focus on feminist research. I am running for the Canadian Greens because I believe in the party's 6 fundamental values: ecological wisdom, nonviolence, social justice, sustainability, participatory democracy, and respect for diversity. With those principles in mind, I am running for economic diversification and meaningful climate action in Banff-Airdrie. I believe that it is in our best interest as a country to expand our narrowing focus on fossil fuels and invest in the green industries that create reliable long-term jobs and diversify our local value chains. I am running to renew the social contract between our communities and the federal government through a just transition to a clean energy economy, protecting and expanding healthcare with a focus on increased mental health supports, ending the housing crisis by recognizing that every Canadian deserves the right to have access to safe, affordable housing, and working towards true reconciliation with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I have met with voters in Airdrie, Banff, Canmore, Cochrane, Crossfield, Rockyview, and the Stoney Nakoda community. And through those many interactions, I have crafted ambitious, realistic, and inclusive policy positions. I'm glad to have the opportunity to share those positions and my green vision for Banff-Airdrie with you all tonight. Thank you.
And now we'll call on Mr. Blake Richards, representing the Conservative Party.
Good evening. My name is Blake Richards, just in case you didn't see all the signs out there. By the way, there'll probably be a few less of those when I saw them. I thought there might be a few too many myself. I want to start as well by thanking the Chamber of Commerce, the City of Airdrie, and all the volunteers and any sponsors that were a part of making this evening happen. It's been a real honor to serve as your Member of Parliament, and it's in serving you that gives me that desire to continue to carry on and be your voice in Parliament in the next term. So I'm not really someone who likes to spend time talking about myself. I don't really like the attention, to be quite honest. And even the idea of kind of being expected to come and do that tonight makes me a little uncomfortable, I'll be honest. But I do know that you all know how hard that I've worked on your behalf as your Member of Parliament, and that it has yielded results. We can point to a number of things, whether it be significant infrastructure investments that we've been able to secure for local infrastructure, personal initiatives that I've brought forward that have resulted in changes to make our communities safer. We're standing up against planned harmful Liberal policies like the small business tax changes that they proposed. So I don't want to spend the whole of my time talking about me. I want to make it about you. The focus should be on you, because that's always been my focus as your Member of Parliament, is on you and serving you. And so I seek to continue my service as your Member of Parliament to ensure that we can get our economy moving again, to get some pipelines built, to get people here in our community back to work, and to make sure that our local businesses have an opportunity to prosper once again. So I look forward to the opportunity to put before you tonight the policies that will do just that, the positive conservative vision that we have for our country, and to make your life just a little bit more affordable. Thank you.
And now I'll ask Ms. Nadine Wellwood, representing the People's Party of Canada.
Thank you and welcome. Freedom of expression is the cornerstone of every free nation, and it is being eroded today at unprecedented rates. There are those in power today that want nothing more than to rule over others. Globalists that are using fear and panic to maintain control. But Canada is a sovereign nation with a proud history of tolerance, gender equality, and freedom of expression. I have worked in defense, and I find it appalling that Canadians are being forced to express support for legislation that is often contrary to what they actually believe. People today are afraid to voice their own opinions for fear of being politically incorrect. Canadians who simply have a difference of opinion, being silenced, censored, and are personally attacked. Whether we disagree or agree with what another says, in a free and democratic society, we protect the right to say it. What, in the opinion of some, may be offensive cannot serve as the basis for legal discrimination and censorship. Logic, not emotion, must prevail. I bring this up because tonight, whether the conversation turns to immigration, taxation, pipelines, or climate change, without the ability to have open and honest discussion about hard, difficult subjects, often unpopular, we risk losing the very foundation of what makes us Canadian. I am Nadine Wellwood, your candidate for the People's Party of Canada, and at the center of every policy, you will find 4 key principles: freedom, fairness, respect, and responsibility. That is why I am here.
And now, Ms. Ann Wilson with the NDP party.
Hello, Airdrie friends, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ann Wilson, and I'm running for the NDP. Now, I looked at the vote prosperity documents. Now, how many here are actually belonging to the chamber and would know that document? Oh, good. Oh, good. There's some of you. Now, I realize that the chamber has a mandate to benefit Canadian businesses, not necessarily the whole citizen. And you'll know that the NDP believes in governments having the power to address the limitations of the market in addressing the common good for public interest and for the integrity of the environment. So with that in mind, we actually do agree with the Chamber that there should be a national pharmacare program. But the NDP diverges from the Chamber to say it should be pharmacare for all. Even if a voter can now afford medications on their own, or even if they have benefits, we believe that the program is much more sustainable if the purchasing power of the whole nation is used. We'll just get better deals on medication. Now, the Chamber also wants to have a commission on tax fairness. Yes, we agree too. We think the Chamber might actually agree with our position on a wealth tax of 1% for wealth for people holding $20 million annually. We plan to reinvest in healthcare, education, and housing affordability. We would keep the small business tax rate at 9% though. I can enthusiastically agree with modern retraining to allow workers to retrain meaningfully, including Indigenous workers who want to fill the gap when opportunities arise. Now, that's me, folks. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I live in Canmore. Okay, I think I already told you.
Oh, I apologize, the NDP. Okay, so now we'll move on to the question and answer portion of tonight's event. Please note that each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each chamber question, and then I will call on each candidate randomly. And I think the way that we'll do this to keep it kind of organized is we'll jump to the first question. Blake will answer first, going down and coming back to Austin. Then similarly, the next question, Nadine, will get you to answer first, going down and coming back. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, good. Please stay seated at your table for this one. You have your own mics. Okay, so the following are questions that pertain directly to our Canadian Chamber of Commerce Vote Prosperity Business Platform. I'd like to now call on Ron Zook, Chair of the Airdrie Chamber Advocacy Committee, to ask the first question of the evening. Ron?
Thank you. Good evening. For all the candidates, if elected, what are you personally prepared to do to engage and support small business in the communities you serve?
And we'll begin with Blake.
Well, I think those of you who are involved with the Chamber and have been around the community for a number of years will know exactly what I'm prepared to do. I'm always there to consult with you, to hear from you, to take back your concerns to Ottawa. And, there's been a lot to be concerned about over the last few years. Not the least of which would, of course, been the small business tax changes. Of course, as the person who's been the small business critic for our party for the last couple of years, I've been pretty front and foremost on being an advocate for small businesses and also pushing back against changes like that would have been the end of local family-run small businesses. And because we were able to push back so hard and because so many people like the Chamber of Commerce and others got behind that, we were able to prevent a lot of what could have been very, very damaging. Now, there is still some things that need to be done. We will, in fact, be repealing some of the things that were done there so that family businesses can continue to get ahead. There isn't enough time to kind of go through that, but I want to make that clear. I also want to make sure that I give you some sense of what our business platform is. We're also going to be looking at trying to reduce the government red tape and government regulation. As I've traveled across the country as a small business critic, I've heard that over and over again, how much government red tape strangles businesses. So we're going to be looking to remove as much of that as possible and make sure that's, the idea of making a profit and creating jobs isn't a bad thing.
Nadine?
having owned a number of small businesses myself, I've worked in finance as a chartered investment manager and a financial planner, and I've owned a small aerospace and defense company working in modeling and simulation, human factors engineering. I've already met with a number of local business owners here in Airdrie and Cochrane, and it's strangulation right now by regulation. Taxes are an issue. Our policy is to allow the free markets to operate and to allow people to use their own innovation and creativity and ingenuity. And that's best left to private industry and to business owners. And so for us, the concerns I'm hearing primarily are around regulation and taxes and the ability to attract talent. So for us, our platform, in order to attract talent, I think we need to be competitive on taxation. And we will reduce business taxes. We also will abolish capital gains. By lowering personal income taxes as well, I hope that we can attract real talent back into our provinces. By not supporting the businesses that we have in Canada, we can be competitive not only within our own country, but also within other businesses and attracting them to Canada as well. So the tax system is very complex today, and it's outdated and inefficient, and there's definitely things more that we can do, and hopefully I can bring my own personal experience to assist them to grow their own businesses.
So in order to expedite, I'm just going to ask that everybody hold the applause till the end, and we'll applaud for everybody at once so that we can kind of get through on time. So Anne, your response?
I've lived for many years in Canmore and Banff, also Calgary, but really since 1980 in the Bow Valley. I continually visit all these towns, including Cochrane, Exshaw, Canmore, Banff, Lake Louise, in my role as a lawyer. Every lawyer is a small business on their own, so I'm somewhat familiar with some of the annoyances and barriers to small business. Like I said, my party would keep the small business tax at 9%. We would also relax the rules for passing on family businesses, just more red tape that really families wanting to continue a business really don't need. I'd agree that the CRA bothering small business with requests for documents would be overwhelming. You would feel quite small, and there's a huge government institution asking you for more documents. I caution, however, that regulation shouldn't be denigrated as red tape. Regulation, which is another word for red tape, is how laws are enforced. And we have lots of laws that are there to protect the consumer. So unlike some of the candidates, I'm actually in favor of regulation for small business, as long as it's meaningful. And
Austin?
Everyone with a dignified, high quality of life, embraces diversity, and responsibly stewards public finances. In a green economy, economic policy flows out of social and environmental policy. In a green economy, we will embed conservative society values rather than consumer society values. A green economy is powered by renewable energy. It builds community resilience and self-reliance. It is organized for zero waste generation, and it ensures local food security. A green economy ensures fair taxation and fiscal stewardship. As a Green MP for Banff Airdrie, I would fight to establish a federally funded green venture capital fund to support viable, small, local green business startups. I will reduce the paperwork burden on small businesses by eliminating duplicative tax filings and red tape. We will maintain the current level of taxation for small business. We will reduce payroll taxes and introduce a carbon fee and dividend, and legislate a required consideration of the impact on small businesses of all new legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, for joining us. I'd now like to call on Amy Ballman, member of the Airdrie Chamber Advocacy Committee, to ask the second question of the evening. And this time I'll start with Nadine.
The Chamber Network has been calling for a Royal Commission to conduct a full and comprehensive review of Canada's tax code because our tax system is uncompetitive, complex, outdated, and one of the leading causes of declining investment in the nation. Are you supportive of undertaking such a review to modernize and simplify Canada's tax code, and would you voice your support in Parliament?
Wow, if there was ever a yes or no answer, I could do that one easy. Yes. I brought with me tonight an old copy of the Canada Income Tax Act. It was the very first one that was issued in Canada. It's 45 pages long. Today, if you were to drop the Income Tax Act on your foot, you'd probably need a trip to the emergency room. Things can be that simple. Again, CRA system is very complex, and it's a detractor not only for personal individuals, but businesses. The People's Party, we have faith in people. We have faith in the free markets if they are allowed to thrive and flourish. We want to promote investment, and the best way to do that, to attract talent and to attract companies to Canada, is to stimulate growth, and that's to be very competitive with our taxes. And it's not just about the dollar amount, it's about the implementation needs to be simple. We don't need CRA to harass our small businesses and our middle class. It's unnecessary. What we do need is a system that is simple, fair, and efficient for all Canadians, businesses included. So we want to propose policies that people can understand, that make sense, that are meaningful, and that will make sure that people are able to reinvest.
Anne?
Oh, thanks. I touched a bit on the Chamber's desire to have a tax commission based on fairness. It's interesting. We just kind of talked about how regulation is really a barrier to activity. But really, a commission on tax fairness? Do you really want to do that? Okay, Chamber, go ahead. But elections are the place where people can make propositions and see who agrees. I've said that I'm a New Democrat. We're about people. We're really not about businesses. And I think it's quite simple to say we should pay our fair share of taxes as individuals. We should also ask wealthy corporations to pay their fair share. We should ask the rich to pay their fair share. In order to have the programs, the social programs that we want, we should be taxing fairly. So from different aspects, actually, the NDP does agree with the Chamber of Commerce. It's just that I really do think that a commission, too long.
Blake? Oh, sorry, Austin. Messing up my own system.
The Green Party of Canada will establish an arm's-length federal tax commission to analyze the system for fairness based on the principle of progressive taxation. The last time this was done was in the 1960s, and we believe it's well overdue to implement this tax commission. Thank you.
Good answer.
Blake?
All right, well, 3 out of 4 is pretty good on this one, because I can give you a yes on this one too. As our party's small business critic, one of the things that I was tasked with doing this past year was going across the country and consulting with small business owners and chambers of commerce and hearing what some of the issues are. And very clearly, everywhere I went in this country, there was 2 issues that were causing our businesses to be uncompetitive with, particularly our neighbors to the south, but with many places in the world. And with global markets and things these days, it's very critical that our businesses be competitive. And so one of those I touched on earlier is government red tape and the barriers that it puts up, and we want to knock down some of those barriers. There is a place for regulation, but we way overdo it in this country, and it's time that someone takes a look and figures out how can we eliminate some of that. stuff that's redundant, no longer necessary. But on this issue in particular, that's the other issue that came up time and time again, the complexity of our tax system. I mean, you call Revenue Canada, you get 4 different people on the phone after you wait on hold for a couple hours, and you'll get 7 different opinions. So if they don't even understand it, how the heck are the rest of us supposed to understand it? And so this is a huge issue, and it's one that we do have to look at, and we've committed in our platform that we will do just that. We have to figure out how to make our system work so that taxpayers can understand it, so that taxpayers aren't spending burdensome amount of time trying to just pay their taxes.
Thank you, Amy. Now I'd like to call Marilyn back to the stage, Executive Director of the Airdrie Chamber Advocacy Committee, and to ask the third question on behalf of the Airdrie Chamber of Commerce. Marilyn?
Should your party either form government or participate in the minority government coalition, how committed are you personally to ensuring the Trans Mountain and other major infrastructure projects across Canada will be built?
And this time we'll start with Anne.
Oh, thanks. I'm a Rachel Notley New Democrat, a proud Rachel Notley New Democrat. I believe that the Trans Mountain Pipeline will be built. Now, it's a question of when, and as I was just chatting to some people in the front there, the Conservatives messed up the consultation process, and that was caught by the courts, causing lots of delay. Now, that's a sign to a government to reinvigorate their policy, do something about the legislation, and get cracking on what they said they would do. Now, the Liberals had their chance too, and the Liberals are supposed to be all about the pipeline. And what did they do? Also did not do an appropriate consultation process. And there that pipeline is, again, stuck in the courts. Now, it's all very well to say, oh, the Liberals bought it and it's been approved, but it has, those 2 governments have had their turn and they have not done their job. The other thing I should say is that I am, along with the rest of my party, this is our platform, I'm deeply committed to pivoting away as fast as possible from that classic energy icon, oil, and into more sustainable forms of energy. Our children are demanding that.
Austin?
It's no secret that the Green Party of Canada wants to transition away from fossil fuels. However, the Green Party of Canada does not whip its votes, and I will say that I am personally not necessarily anti-pipeline. I do believe that one more pipeline might be in Canada's best interest to get oil off of rail, but I don't believe the current projects are in Canada's best interest due to not properly consulting with Indigenous groups. I think the projections of UNDRIP are very important to the values that we share as Canadians, and I think we need to look at the issue pragmatically. Full support for a pipeline is just as unrealistic as full support against pipelines, and we all need to step back and look at it through a nonpartisan lens and really go by the asks in UNDRIP and look at a new project that will be in Canada's best interest. Thank you.
Blake?
Well, how committed am I to seeing this happen? If you put it on a scale of 1 to 100, I'm about 1,000. So, you know, and you don't have to just take my word for that. You've seen it in the last 4 years. You've seen the efforts that I've made on your behalf. You know, the statements I've made in Parliament, questions I've asked in Parliament. You know, coming around door to door through our community with petitions, trying to call for pipelines to be built, trying to call for some of the other actions that are needed to make sure we can get pipelines built. And so we have a 4-point plan in this regard. There's actually a number of other things I could add to that, but in the time I have, I'll touch on the 4-point plan. And the first one is we'll remove the carbon tax. Second one is we've got to repeal a couple of pieces of legislation. The first one being C-48, which is what we call the No More Pipelines bill, which means that you know, the approval process that will never allow a pipeline to get built in this country again. Then there's a tanker ban that Justin Trudeau put in place. We've got to remove that so we can get the oil going off of our coast. We're shipping it in tankers now to serve our needs in this country. We aren't even energy self-sufficient in Canada, and there's no reason that shouldn't be the case. And then the fourth thing we would do is make sure that where necessary, we would enforce federal jurisdiction to make sure that pipelines aren't unnecessarily blocked and delayed. We have to get pipelines. We are not getting the price for our oil. We are not serving our own needs here in Canada, and we could be serving the rest of the world as well, and we're not doing that. We need to change this.
Nadine?
We have a one-point plan. It's called the Constitution, Section 9210, and we will impose the pipelines. And we're not afraid to say it in both French and in English, and it's not if necessary. If the Harper government couldn't do it, I don't think Andrew Scheer's government is going to be able to do it. So unfortunately, I think without imposing the pipelines, Alberta yet again will see another 4 years without a shovel in the ground. So we are the only party that is openly and honestly talking about pipelines, not just energy corridors. We want to see pipelines built. Why? I wish I had my t-shirt on that said, "I love Canadian oil." I'm going, we need to get our industry stimulated. People have villainized our industry. They're villainizing our resources. And I'm going, for what reason? I'm going, we all stand here today with the luxuries, the privilege, and the comforts that we have. And that luxury and privilege has allowed us to be able to take things like the environment a lot more seriously. And so for me, the pipeline needs to be built, but it also needs to be built privately. I think Trudeau made the mistake by buying the pipeline. We just need to get out of our private industry way and allow them to do what they know and what they know how to do best, and that's build pipelines.
The next 3 questions will be pertaining to the City of Airdrie municipal issues. I'd like to now call upon Councillor Tina Petro to ask the 4th question of the evening. Tina?
Hi. So high-growth communities require stable and adequate infrastructure funding programs to build and maintain the vast majority of Canada's public infrastructure and sustain the positive impact on the local and larger economies. The Federal Gas Tax Fund is a solid model to build on for this. Airdrie has used gas tax fund proceeds for many projects, including expanding our transit system, installing the largest municipal rooftop solar system in Canada, and providing needed enhancements to our regional and community parks. Does your party support the permanent doubling of the gas tax fund to municipalities?
And then this time we're back at the beginning to start with Austin.
I believe that it's time to give the municipal order of government the tools and support required to provide the fundamental services relied on by the vast majority of Canadians. With only 10 cents out of every tax dollar flowing to the municipal order of governments, vast inequities in our governance structures and financial stability have been created. If these responsibilities are downloaded to municipalities, then revenue sharing agreements need to be reviewed to ensure that they have the funds to successfully fulfill those responsibilities. The Green Party of Canada will institutionalize federal transfers to municipalities through the Municipal Fund, a renaming of the Federal Gas Tax Fund. We will ensure that this fund is permanently doubled so Airdrie and other communities in Banff Airdrie have predictable and reliable funding. Thank you.
Blake?
Well, this is an issue that obviously I've had a lot of experience with in the last number of years as your member of parliament. I've worked very closely with our local councils to make sure that we get the infrastructure projects that are priorities for our citizens. And one of the ways that that is best done is by making sure there is stable and predictable funding. And that's why when we were last in power, we did double the gas tax fund. We did make it permanent because it is critical that municipalities have the ability to plan with stable, predictable funding. Because those decisions are best made at the local level. They aren't something that should be done in Edmonton or in Ottawa. They should be made at the local level because the City Council is best placed to know what the needs of the community are. And I'm always happy to work with them to push the projects forward. And we've been quite successful at that in the past, and I'm sure we'll be successful at that in the future if I have that opportunity. But certainly, to have that stable, predictable funding is something that I think is critically important for our municipalities.
Nadine?
I think we collect more than enough taxes from our people today that maybe revisiting what we collect the taxes for, and then maybe ensuring that what we're collecting taxes for is what they're actually being used for. I think we pay more than enough in taxes, especially for infrastructure projects, at the pumps. And why are they being put into general coffers and not necessarily being segregated and used to make sure that our municipalities, our provinces, and federally, we have the infrastructure that we need? So for me, before we take a look at adding to taxes, I'd really like to take a look at what we actually have and how it's being spent and how it's being used and for what purpose it's being collected. And I do agree with Mr. Richards, stable and predictable income is necessary for planning. And I'm going, we know our infrastructure needs years in advance. We know when we put something in what the lifespan is going to be. And we should be able to have a system in place that allows us to plan for that effectively and efficiently. I just may not necessarily agree that we need to add more taxes in order for you to have come out of your pocket to do it. I think we're already collecting enough taxes. I think we just need to reallocate them in the right way.
Anne?
I do agree that the public good should be paid for by the public. And it's always open to people, if they feel I am paying too much at the pump, to change their ways to whatever degree is available to an individual. You could get a different car, you could get an electric bike. It's those kind of questions that we should be thinking about. And that's to reply to Ms. Wellwood. But I understand that Airdrie's population has doubled in the last 4 years. And there does have to be those things that people enjoy in common, such as transit and rooftop solar and community parks, to be paid for. Otherwise, Airdrie just isn't an awesome place to live in, like I can see that it is. So my party would agree to increase the federal gas tax specifically for community and municipality infrastructure. That seems a very good use of the public purse.
Thank you. I'd now like to call on Councillor Ron Chapman to ask the 5th question of the evening. Ron?
Good evening, candidates. Thanks for coming out. As Councillor Petro mentioned, Airdrie is a growing community. We have doubled in size over the last decade. We've doubled in size, and our population now sits at 70,564 the last census, which makes us the 5th largest community in Alberta. A lot of people don't realize that, but we're the 5th largest city in Alberta. Airdrie's access to affordable housing challenge is twofold. Over the last few years, mortgage rules have changed tremendously. The high qualifying thresholds and the 2% stress test has made home ownership unattainable for many younger residents and families. Airdrie has some of the highest rents in Alberta. Airdrie Housing presently has only 44 units of affordable housing and has a wait list of 148 long with an annual turnover of just 9 units. At this rate, it'll take 16 years for just that wait list to access housing. My question is, what will your party do to ensure that Airdrie residents have access to safe, secure, affordable housing in our community?
And we'll start with Blake this time.
Sure. Appreciate that question. Certainly my background was in the real estate industry. I've also served on the finance committee in Parliament the last few years. And this has been a topic we've actually discussed quite a lot, because some of the changes the Liberal Party brought in, the stress test that you mentioned, and some of the other mortgage rule changes that they brought in, have had a real detrimental impact for people looking to get in, particularly people looking to get into their first home. And even over the last couple of years, we've even tried as Conservative members on that committee to force there to even just be a review of it, just to have a study to look at the impacts that there's been. And the Liberal Party has denied that every single time. They don't even want to see the impacts that their policies have had. So we want to change that. We want to make sure that we make with the stress test, we want to eliminate that for renewals and for to make sure that people with their first homes have a chance here. We also are going to increase the ability to have an amortization period of 30 years rather than 25 to bring the cost down for people a little bit. We're obviously going to lower taxes as well to help people to have that ability to save for that down payment, because that's actually often what the biggest challenge is for people. And the other thing we want to see, one of the most heavily regulated industries that we have in this country at all 3 levels of government is our construction industry. And if we can remove some of those regulations, we can bring down the cost of home construction. That would also give people an opportunity to have access to a little bit more affordable housing. So those are a few of the ideas that I have in the time we have allotted.
Nadine?
So I think with anything, private industry is probably, and the free markets are the best to decide what the value of something actually is. However, I think government often interferes by manipulating and trying to economically position things in a way that it feels is best rather than letting the free markets. And I think for us, what we want to do is a policy that's fair and respectful for all Canadians. And doing that, I think what we need to do is address affordability. And I'm going, if development costs were less, then housing would cost less. And one of the easiest and fastest ways to bring development costs down is to get rid of regulation. I understand, yes, we may need some regulation, but it should be meaningful, thoughtful regulation. And I'm going, today, when you've got 3 levels of government and 3 levels of hoops to jump through, all of this comes at a cost. I personally have experienced the cost of compliance, $170,000 over 3 years, just jumping through somebody else's hoops. And I'm going, if we want to have affordability, if we want to have Canadians that can stay in their own homes, and what we need to do is make it affordable across the board. So lowering taxes, ending things like supply management so people can keep more money in their own pockets every day, these are things that we can do.
Anne? Thanks. Our party intends to build 500 units of affordable housing across Canada, and Airdrie would get their fair share because we would deal it out on a regional basis. And the federal government would be tasked with working with municipalities so that their chosen plans do not sit there languishing while people are waiting for a place to live. And furthermore, we would increase the amortization of a mortgage from 25 years to 30 years, and we would rebate the closing costs on a mortgage, which one of the things that can tip a young family over the balance of affordability. In addition, we would provide an up to $5,000 rent rebate annually for renters that were paying more than 30% of their income in rent. And in that way, everything becomes more affordable. And for the 500,000 units, there could be an attractive mix of different styles. So it could be co-ops, social housing, as the councillor mentioned, and even co-housing. In this way, we would hope to give Canadians some relief, and that would benefit Airdrie.
Austin?
The Green Party of Canada believes that everyone has the right to access safe, affordable housing. We will legislate housing as a legally protected fundamental human right for all Canadians and permanent residents. We will appoint a Minister for Housing to strengthen the national housing strategy so that it meets the needs for affordable housing that are unique to communities like Airdrie, in collaboration with premiers to recognize that housing, like healthcare, is a provincial jurisdiction. We will include new and existing housing as eligible infrastructure for funding purposes, allowing Canada Infrastructure Bank to support provincial and municipal housing projects. We will refocus the core mandate of CMHC on supporting the development of affordable, non-market, and cooperative housing. And we will create a co-op housing strategy that would update the mechanisms for financing co-op housing in partnership with CMHC, co-op societies, credit unions, and other lenders. Thank you.
I would now like to call upon Councillor Al Jones to ask the 6th question of the evening. Al?
Thank you. Okay, so quite a number of years ago, Canada Post vacated its downtown location at the corner of 1st Street and 1st Avenue Northwest to move into a new location in Kingsview Business Park. So their old location is smack dab in the middle of our downtown. The site, since then, has been boarded up and remained vacant for over 10 years now. Several local investors have expressed interest in leasing out, purchasing this prime location, and of course the city has a desire to beautify and make our downtown more attractive. What will you do to work with the City of Airdrie to allow the old downtown Canada Post site to either be sold and or redeveloped for the people?
And this time we'll start with Nadine.
So I would obviously want to understand who actually owns the land and the property, and that's something I'm not privy to at this time. But obviously our party is about less government interference and more freedom. I also personally started my career with a degree in recreation administration. I'm all for beautifying areas and finding personal enjoyment in outdoors and activities. I think that would be a wonderful plan for Airdrie, something that everybody could participate in. And I really don't see it necessarily as a federal issue. I see that as a municipal initiative, and if there's local investors who want to take that on upon themselves, I would love to be a part of that project and think I could bring skills to bear actually to actually enhance that and even in some ways champion it. But I see that as more as a personal opportunity. From a federal government, I think less government means more freedom and respecting the jurisdictions of municipalities and provinces to do projects like that for themselves. So I commend you guys for bringing something like that forward, and as I learn more about it, then please, I would be more than happy to contribute what I can contribute to personally and champion that on all levels of government.
Anne?
It sounds like the building is owned by the federal government. It's a Canada Post building. I'm assuming there must be some kind of holdup as to what is intended to be done with it. And I agree that it can be frustrating, but that sounds like something that an MP could do to find out, well, what is the holdup? Why can't the building be used? And I think if I recall, it's across the street from the provincial building where the courthouse is. I see people nodding. Yeah, so that kind of leaves a dead spot in the downtown. But certainly downtown property is very prized, and it should be beautified. But like I say, that does sound like a partnership issue where the MB can figure out what the problem is and let's try to solve it. I'm assuming that others have tried before, but that doesn't mean that with a new government you can't get better choices.
Austin?
I will say that I don't know if I have enough supplemental knowledge on this particular topic to speak to it directly, but I know that a green government would create what we are calling a Council of Canadian Governments, where we will invite provincial municipal leaders to the policy-making table directly so they can speak to federal representatives and have their voices heard, and we can certainly make projects like this happen much quicker and more affordably and get green spaces and all the things that we want in our cities. Thank you.
Blake?
I don't know where Al went, but I was really surprised to hear him ask that question, because we've only had, I don't know how many conversations about this issue, and obviously we've been working with the city try to get some answers on this. And as it goes back a ways, there's been a few different iterations of what's gone on there. But initially, when the land became vacant, I think the plan was to transfer it to Canada Lands, which is basically the real estate property holder for the federal government. And the plan that we had in place at that time was that there would be an auction for the property, so that someone could, and there was a lot of interest expressed at that time. I had many people approach me for various projects, and that was the plan, and that fell through. And I believe, as I recall, I think it was that there was potential remediation issues there, and that's why that transfer never occurred. So I think the land still sits with Canada Post, actually, which is somewhat the federal government, but obviously a bit of an arm's length corporation in a way too. And that's been a real challenge over the last few years. It seems like every time you get close to having answers, someone new comes in and takes over the role in Canada Post. There's been a lot of problems there, and we're working to try to get the answers, but at the end of the day, I'm going to continue to work with the municipality on this one, because that is a prime piece of real estate, and it's something that is a shame that it's sitting there as an eyesore, and we need to get it addressed.
So now we'll move into the next part of our forum, the public questions. These are questions from the audience here tonight, as well as from those watching on the live stream, and they've been rolling in like crazy, so thank you very much for your submissions. You can continue to submit your questions until the end of the forum tonight. Each candidate will be provided a list of all the questions, and it will be up to them to decide how they want to respond. Okay? A little bit different, the candidates will now have 60 seconds to answer each of the questions chosen from tonight's submissions. Again, I think we got a good rhythm going, so we'll stay in the loop that we're going in. And the first public question will go to Anne. And I believe those questions are coming up.
What is your plan to help youth get jobs? Is that the one?
So what are your top 3 priorities for change in the Banff-Airdrie region?
I think the top priority is climate change. I think every riding has to pull their weight. I've just been involved in so many climate strikes, and obviously I'm an adult, and these climate strikes are run by children. And that's the first thing that those children want, our children. They want politicians and adults to get their act together and do something about climate change. And I am very interested in working with them, and we have lots of things that we can do. So you said 3 things?
3 priorities.
Top 3.
Yes.
I don't know if I have time. The next thing is affordable housing and pharmacare for all. That makes sense.
Austin?
I'm going to agree with Anne and say climate change is a very big topic on everyone's minds, with the climate strikes and millions of people striking all around the world. I attended the climate strike in Canmore just last week, and we had about 300 people show up. It was way more than we expected for such a small community, but it was very inspiring to see so many people come out and show support for a diverse economy and meaningful climate action. I also think affordable housing in Banff-Airdrie is very important. The east of the riding and the west of the riding are both experiencing a housing crisis with booming infrastructure and not enough space. And I also think infrastructure in general, especially out here in the east where the communities are growing so quickly, we need to ensure the federal government can help municipalities grow. Thank you.
Blake?
Well, I would say that number one issue, without question, is getting our oil and gas moving again, getting some pipelines built, getting people back to work. There's no question that has to be the number one issue, and I think everything else will then flow from that. But if if I'm going to pick a second and third, it's a little bit more difficult. But certainly in my mind, affordability, and that includes everything from housing to making sure that people have a little bit more money in their pockets at the end of the month after the government gets its share. So the government share can go down and your share can go up. That would be certainly a second one. I think infrastructure is also a pretty critical one. We have a very fast-growing community here, and many of the communities in this constituency are very fast-growing, and we have to keep pace with those needs as well. But number one is, without a doubt, making sure we get people back to work, because without that, none of the rest of it's possible.
Nadine? Sorry.
No worries. So for me, absolutely, at the doors, when I talk to people, it is pipelines. It is getting people back to work. And that is the number one priority. And we are the only party that has a plan to do that. Pipelines are critical to everything else that we do in this province, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be our health. Equalization is a part of that, as well as the carbon tax. People already pay enough. We need to find ways to reallocate the funds that we have to make better use of it. Lesser government. Small businesses are the heartbeat of every community, the absolute heartbeat. And we need to make it easy for them to run and operate their businesses. So again, lesser taxes, lesser regulation, balancing the budget so that we can secure our social programs that we have today for future generations, I would probably have to say is our third.
Thank you. Our next question is, will you make it illegal to import oil from foreign countries? And we'll start with you, Austin.
Illegal.
Illegal.
I don't think we would make it illegal, but we would certainly want to stop the import and export of oil and use the oil that we do produce in Canada for Canada in the petrochemical industry to produce things like paint and plastic. We want to have a very rapid ramp down of fossil fuel use in Canada, but that doesn't mean that we're going to shut it off tomorrow. Our plan calls for a carbon neutral Canada by 2050. And carbon neutral doesn't mean that we stop using oil. It just means that the significant investments that we've made in clean energy will offset our carbon emissions. Thank you.
Blake?
Well, I mean, it absolutely makes no sense that we're sitting on some of the biggest reserves of oil in the world, and we're bringing in oil from other parts of the world, places like Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Iran. Tell me how that is better somehow for the environment. Tell me how that is better for our economy. Tell me how that's better for Canadian jobs. It makes absolutely no sense. So our plan is to make Canada energy self-sufficient. We can do that, and there's no reason that shouldn't be possible in this country. And not only that, but we should be servicing other areas. I mean, how does it make any sense that that our government is telling us we can't ship our oil off of our coast, but tankers are coming in full of oil from places like Saudi Arabia and servicing the needs of people in other parts of our country? We absolutely need to become energy self-sufficient in this country. There is no question about it, and it's so possible. We got to get going on it.
Nadine?
I think it would be unrealistic to make foreign oil at this stage illegal. And the reason being is because we in Canada do not have the facilities to actually refine, for example, the oil that we actually have in the ground. Pipelines are one part of the issue, but actually keeping jobs, keeping the resources here, refinement of those resources, that's a part of the plan. We do need energy independence. The fact that we take oil from Saudi Arabia, from Venezuela, from Iran, some of the worst human rights violators in the world, do you think they care about environment? No. And our energy sector is just that. It's into energy. It is not just about oil and gas. They give back to the environment. So for me, it's about, no, we can't make it illegal. Why? Because we are still dependent upon it. Oil is increasing, demand is increasing.
Anne?
No, my party wouldn't make the import of oil illegal from other countries. That just seems like a non-starter.
Okay, the next question. What will your relationship with First Nations be, and how will you address the water crisis? And we'll start with Blake.
Sure. That's, we have a First Nation here in our constituency, Stoney Nakoda. And, I've always had a good relationship working with the three chiefs and councils that they have on that First Nation. And, I also served for a time when we were last in government as the Aboriginal Affairs, the chair of the Aboriginal Affairs Committee. And, what we were seeking to try to do at that time, first and foremost, was to create accountability, because everything stems from accountability. And we put forward what was called the First Nations Accountability Act, which meant that The band councils and the councillors and the chiefs were expected to be responsible and accountable to their membership and to Canadians for the way the money was spent, to be transparent about it, like all other levels of government are in this country. And then we were able to get some schools built, including one that we were able to secure for Morley here in our constituency, and working towards getting safer drinking water. And so those are all issues that I'd love to be able to continue to work on.
Nadine?
Being Métis myself, it's one thing to look from the outside in, it's another thing to look from the inside out. And more than anything, I think Aboriginal people today just want to feel like they add value and that they're respected. And I don't think anybody appreciates having any form of government force anything on you from the top down and to tell you what you're going to do. I think we have major problems, and I think part of the problem, the solution, is in the discussion, is in the consultation. But what we've been doing to date is not working. It's ineffective. And so we have to find a different approach. The fact that anybody in Canada, whether it be Aboriginal or otherwise, doesn't have clean drinking water is atrocious. I'm going, that is something that we can easily fix tomorrow. And I'm going, and it should be fixed. But as far as Aboriginal issues go, I think what we need to do is start with consultation that is both respectful and thoughtful.
Anne?
As a criminal defense lawyer, I have many Indigenous clients, and I'm well aware that because of the trauma of residential schools and adoption, that some of those children have gotten, as they became adults, have gotten into the criminal justice system. So some of the things that I see from a justice point of view are a way of responding to the calls for action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I believe it's numbers 33, 34, and 35. So for example, we would get rid of the mandatory minimums, which means that judges' hands are tied. They can't apply discretion to a particular individual. And so often some of my clients would want to plead guilty just to get out of jail.
Austin?
This question is very important to me. One of the big draws for me to the Green Party is their steadfast belief that we need to improve our relationship with Indigenous groups in Canada. Every aspect of our plan, from healthcare, housing, the climate crisis, has been crafted with our relationship to Indigenous groups in mind. The Green Party of Canada would honor treaties and respect all rights of Indigenous people, and we will consult with Indigenous people to determine when and where to repeal the oppressive and racist Indian Act. And we will fully implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women report and develop a national strategy for housing, clean water, food security, and healthcare for every Indigenous group in Canada. Thank you.
Okay, next question. What is your plan to help youth get jobs? And we'll start with Nadine this time.
I think, again, youth in this country they're our future. And I'm going, it pleases me to be able to work with our youth in particular. And for me, helping them get jobs is really about creating opportunity. It's about allowing them to feel hopeful about their future. I think that's a big part of it today. I think a lot of people are trying to steal our children's youth by making them feel fearful of the very environment in which they live. And I think that's shameful on us adults. I know when I grew up, my parents told me to dream and to dream big and to go after those dreams. And there was nothing that I or anyone else could do that would prevent me from accomplishing anything I put my mind to. And I think realistically, we just need to prop children back up again and tell them to dream big. And then
Yeah, dream big. I believe in education, and what my party would do immediately is remove the interest on student loans. A good education in today's economy, whether it's training from an apprenticeship program to university or community college, has almost become essential if you want to enter the job market with an advantage. We would also aspire to moving to free tuition so that our young people can actually make plans for what they would like to do without being burdened by a really high student loan. I think that's essential for a modern, educated workforce.
Austin?
Well, the Green Party of Canada will eliminate tuition fees and forgive student debt to allow all students and young people to work towards their dreams and everything that they want to accomplish without the burden of debt. And it will allow minority groups and people in low-income families to send more of their kids to school and get more people working. And we will also invest significantly in the clean energy economy, and that will create thousands of jobs for people in Alberta and across the country. We want to institute a national east-west electricity grid from the wind and solar energy that we will produce in Alberta, retrofit all homes. All of these things will create thousands of jobs in Canada and a lot of youth jobs as well. Thank you.
Blake?
Well, I think there's a couple of parts to this. First of all, obviously, giving an opportunity, you have to make sure there's opportunity for education. So one of the things that, for example, we want to do is we want to increase the grant portion that's available when parents save money in an RESP for their children's education, so that there's a little bit more money there for kids to be able to get an education. But I think as part of that as well, we have to, at all levels of government, there has to be an effort made to stop just encouraging a certain type of education. I think we have to remember that our trades and other types of education are equally as valuable, if not probably more important in our economy right now and the needs that we have. And the second thing is we need to make sure there's jobs available. And how are we going to make sure there's jobs available? Well, we're hurting in this province right now. We need more jobs. How are we going to get those? We need to get our oil and gas moving again. We need to bring that price back up. And one of the ways we have to do that is build some pipelines to give opportunity. So if we can get an opportunity to get a better education and give a better opportunity to have a job when that education finishes, that's how we can.
Okay, next question. What have you done to support the communities in the Banff Airdrie riding, and what will you commit to do moving forward? And we'll start with Anne.
Sir, what was the question? What have I done to support Banff Airdrie businesses?
The Banff Airdrie riding, and what will you commit to do moving forward?
I'm sorry, what have I done personally to support Banff Airdrie?
What have
riding?
you done to support the communities in the Banff Airdrie riding, and what will you commit to do moving forward?
As a person, I've been a criminal defense lawyer, taking mostly legal aid files since 2003. As soon as I became a law student, and it was my second job, as you can see, I started running trials for people that really couldn't afford a lawyer, and it was glorious fun. When I opened up my own business, I think it was 2006, I continued to do the same thing. There's nothing worse than at your worst moment to realize that you can't afford a lawyer, and then people call me. So I work for people from Lake Louise, Banff, Canmore, Cochrane, Exshaw, sometime to Calgary if they absolutely make me. And even sometimes I come to Airdrie to help out with duty counsel.
Austin?
Well, I will admit that I've only lived in Banff Airdrie for about 2 years. This campaign, running as the Green Party candidate in Banff Airdrie, has been my commitment to this riding. I want to raise green issues to the minds of voters and everyone in the riding. And whoever up here gets elected on October 21st, I plan to hold them accountable to green issues for the next 4 years and every year after that. And I just want to ensure that all the solutions and issues that we've talked about today are actually implemented, and we have safe, affordable housing in Banff Airdrie, and we get the infrastructure funding that we need to grow our communities. Thank you.
Blake?
Well, certainly for myself, you know, as your representative in Parliament, I've always tried to be your voice in Parliament. I've always tried to be a champion for our communities and for the people within them. And one of the best ways you do that is by beginning by listening. And that's something that I've always worked very hard to make sure that I'm doing. Whether it be, you know, regular consultations, you know, we always do our pre-budget consultations every year. We have our community office hours throughout the constituency, and the various forms of communication that there is. I take advantage of all the various forms of communication to make sure that I'm getting a chance to hear from you what your concerns are, what your needs are, and what the needs of the community are. And if you don't start from that position of listening to hearing what the needs are in the community, you can't be a voice for the community. So I've always taken that approach as the starting point. And then you take that forward and you do everything you can to champion what's important for the residents of this constituency and for the communities within this constituency. And that's the record that I've had, and that's what I will continue to do if I'm reelected.
Nadine?
As a financial planner, I guess, and a chartered investment manager, every day I listen to people in my community tell me their dreams, tell me what it is that they try to accomplish. And I'm privileged enough to be able to help them sit down and identify what they want, but not only help them identify what they want, but help them map out a plan to get there. I'm not about promises. I'm about plans. And I want people, every person in this room, to be able to accomplish everything that they want to do. I'm a big champion of youth. My little girl goes to school, and I like to volunteer. I go on the field trips. I come and I deliver fun lunches every other Friday. I've also a small business owner, so I've employed other people. And Blake is absolutely right. It starts with listening. As a financial planner and as a small business owner, the first thing that you do is listen. You listen to what other people need, what other people want, and you champion that. And then you give them the plans and allow them the freedom to accomplish.
Okay, next question. What is your party's position on access to childcare and benefits to support young families? And we'll start with you, Austin.
The Green Party of Canada will implement universal childcare for all families. And that's a very simple answer. Thank you.
Blake?
Okay. Well, my perspective on this one is that we have to obviously give parents the ability to be able to make it affordable, to do whatever it is that their choices are in terms of how they will raise their children. And, you know, one of a few of the things that I can point to in terms of examples of the things that we would put forward in our platform that would make that possible. I mean, obviously, first and foremost, we have a series of tax cuts and tax credits that we're proposing that will make life a little bit more affordable for families, but specifically on the aspect of raising children, you know, we want to put back in place the children's fitness tax credit and the children's arts and learning tax credit, which will give families a little bit more money to be able to put their kids into some of those activities that they want to do to give them, you know, a better future. I mentioned earlier about the RESP grants and increasing that contribution from the government towards being able to save for your children's education. So those are a couple of the ideas that I can give at this point as far as what we would do there.
Nadine?
We don't have anything specific as it relates to childcare and access to benefits. What we did was looked at freedom, fairness, respect, and responsibility, and we will reduce taxes for all Canadians. So there are people out there, youth, young adults who may or may not have children, who have their own different struggles. There are young parents that have struggles, and I think the fairest way to address that is to reduce taxes. So 0 to 15,000 personal exemption, so that increases more money, leaves more money in people's pockets. 15,000 to 100 is a 15% flat tax. No conditions. You spend it where it needs to be spent best, and only you know that. Government shouldn't have to decide. Simple, whether you want to go camping, some of you, maybe. Tax credits, no receipts, you don't have to deal with CRA. How about we just don't take it, you keep it.
Anne?
Yes, my party has a child care plan. We plan to create 500,000 spaces for daycare. Now, you'll remember the past 4 years in Alberta, where we also had a pilot program which was very successful and well-loved for $25 a day daycare. So that kind of childcare plan is possible. It has been done before, and it certainly is very needed. Childcare can feel like it's taking up your whole income if you're the second earner in a family. And if you have more than one children, it could take even more. And I know that women sometimes like to stay in the workforce, but it is really unbearable sometimes to look at what women pay in childcare.
Okay, this will be our final question. In regards to seniors and veterans, what is your party's policy on increasing benefits for both constituencies? Sorry, and Blake, you're starting.
Okay, so seniors and veterans in 1 minute, okay. I'll start with veterans because, you know, we owe everything that we have to our veterans. And I don't know if there's any veterans in the room tonight. If you are, can you stand up and just be recognized? Because I think we at least owe you that. Please, yeah. Bottom line is, you know, our men and women who serve this country in uniform, we wouldn't have the freedoms that we enjoy. We wouldn't be sitting here tonight having this debate about who's going to be our representative without what they've done for us. So we can never do enough for them. But we want to put in place a covenant between the federal government and our veterans to make sure that they have the rights and the benefits that they deserve. We have a whole host of other measures we want to put in place, but one of the things we want to do is there's a huge backlog of applications for veterans benefits. We want to clear that out completely within the next 24 months. And well, I guess I don't have time to get to the seniors part.
Nadine?
So I'll touch on the seniors quickly because I think the tax measures and the plans that we've put into place to abolish supply management as well as reduce taxes will have a very positive impact on anybody on a fixed income. As far as veterans go, I have many, many veterans that work on my campaign team. I've worked for the Department of National Defense. Our government has a history, a very long history of having failed our veterans. And our party is going to reverse that. We're going to go back to a one veteran, one standard. And going, these men and women, they risk their lives, but more importantly, they also put their well-being and their relationships at risk every day when they go into scenarios that they don't understand. And they're being asked to do that so that we can maintain the freedoms that we have in this country. The best that we can do is offer them our respect and our support, and that means when they come home as well as abroad.
Oh, thanks. For seniors, we would bring in a dementia care program so that seniors, if they're suffering that kind of debilitating disease, can actually enjoy life. Seniors would also benefit from our Pharma Care for All program, from our dental care program, and also from affordable housing. In terms of veterans' benefits, I understand that there is a big problem with PTSD. That is an unexplored problem, and this is the kind of thing that is an indicator of mental health care needs for people, for veterans. My dad was in the Navy, and he was a tough guy, but he was also sensitive. So I think he would like that.
Austin?
The Green Party of Canada will launch a national re-examination of veterans' issues and to identify necessary reforms. We will restore periodic payment to veterans at pre-2006 levels and work with veterans organizations to review and update the Veteran Charter and the processes, structure, and mandate of the Veterans Review and Appeal Board to ensure all veterans are treated fairly and with respect. This applies to seniors and veterans, but the Green Party of Canada would also implement a guaranteed livable income so that every Canadian can live with dignity and they can live with dignity and be proud of what they're doing in their lives. And we will also implement universal pharmacare by 2020. Thank you.
So thank you to all of our candidates for participating in that Q&A. We'll now move on to the closing statements. You will come to the podium again for your closing statements, and you'll be given 90 seconds. And we'll go in reverse order this time. So I'll ask Ann Wilson, representing NDP.
We didn't talk enough about the most important issue, which is climate change, and what action are these candidates going to take. I can tell you what my party would do. We would immediately declare a climate emergency, and that's so that government departments could actually be instigated to take action, to elevate the risk. That's what governments do. They don't pretend it doesn't exist. We would continue with carbon pricing, and I've heard lots of feedback about, oh, but that means my expenses at the pumps or home heating are increased. No, relax, please. Most of that is fully rebated. We would also, as I've said, we would turn as fast as possible, and we have for the past 4 years in Alberta, in this very province, that where pipelines are everything. We have turned over the past 4 years to solar and wind power, and it has worked very well. And it has provided a place for all of those well-trained oil and gas workers to find a transition with fair employment. I think it's very important to talk about these kind of issues. There was a young lady that Thank you.
Next, we'll have Nadine Wellwood representing the People's Party of Canada.
Elections present us with an opportunity to make change. I'm proposing that we put Alberta back on the map, put Canadians first, and bring unity to our country. Many Albertans have identified the problem as Justin Trudeau, but it does go much deeper than that. Alberta has often sent slates of MPs to Ottawa, and yet here we still stand, unfairly treated, unemployed, often disregarded. Voting for a political party that will pander only to Quebec and Quebec and Ontario will see Alberta yet again ignored for another 4 years. Talking about problems are easy, however. I want to talk about the solution. As Canadians, what is it that we want? Do we want plans, or do we want promises that we can't keep? The People's Party will build pipelines. We have a plan. We have a plan to make life more affordable. We have a plan to balance the budget and secure our children's future. We have a plan to reassert our sovereignty and protect our freedom. On October 21st, I ask each of you, what do you want? Have courage, vote for your principles, and not only will we get rid of Justin Trudeau, but we will get an Alberta that we want and a Canada we can be proud of.
And now, Blake Richards representing the Conservative Party.
Well, I just want to start by thanking all the other candidates up here. I think it was a very respectful debate, and everyone represented their party's platforms admirably, so thank you to all of them. I've always believed that actions speak louder than words, and I think that you know that for me, that's the way I've tried to approach this job. And you've seen it, and you've seen how hard I've worked for you. And you've seen it deliver results, both here locally and at the national level. Whether that be private members' legislation that I've successfully passed, both in government and in opposition, whether that be standing up to fight for Alberta, whether that be making sure that I push initiatives that led to government legislation, or whether it even be raising money in my free time for our community. I've raised over almost $500,000 for charities in our communities through my time in office. And so through that, you know that I'm committed to the community, and you know that I'm doing this for the right reasons. And you know that I'm offering a positive conservative vision and policies that will make a real difference for our community, for our province, and for our country. And so on October 21st, if you want a strong voice, you want an experienced voice, a hard-working voice, and a voice that you know that you can continue to count on, I ask for your support.
And Austin Mullins, representing the Green Party.
I want to again extend my thanks to the City of Airdrie and the Airdrie Chamber of Commerce. I said in my opening statement that I believe democracy in action is democracy well done, and today we have the political actors and the community actors coming together to uphold our democratic institutions, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. As the next Member of Parliament for Banff Airdrie, I am committed to being the strong, responsive, progressive voice that this community needs. If elected, I will be a champion for your right to a prosperous and sustainable future, and I hope that by the end of this campaign, you will seriously consider voting Green on October 21st. Thank you very much. My name is Austin Mullins.
So thank you all again. We really appreciate you taking the time to come and share your platforms with us here today. I'd also like to personally thank the City of Airdrie and the Airdrie Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to be here to moderate. So now I'd like to call back to the stage Airdrie Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Marilyn Alhouse and City Councillor Al Jones.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, it's unfortunate that we've run out of time. I know there's like a plethora of questions that we never got to. By all means, take every opportunity to contact each of these candidates directly. When we are done here, there will be opportunity in the front lobby to mingle with some of them and maybe get some contact info, email addresses, things like that. So please join me in thanking all of our candidates for participating in this evening's event. It takes a significant amount of effort and time to allow their name to stand as a candidate. Thank you for running. Also, thank you to Shauna Feth for joining us from the Alberta Chamber of Commerce to moderate this important event. I think she did a fabulous job and kept everybody on track. Let's give her a round of applause.
Yes, as Councillor Jones mentioned, you saw many questions appearing on the screen behind you, and not all of those questions did we have time to ask. So we will be submitting the entire list to the candidates within the next week, and it will be up to them to determine how they would like to, if answer those questions on their website or whatever platform they choose. Do not call me at the chamber. I won't have those questions for you. It will be the candidates who will answer those. So thank you again to our sponsor, Calgary Real Estate Board, and to all chamber directors, city councillors, volunteers and staff, as well as the Burt Church Theatre team for your support of this forum. While the chamber does not endorse any one candidate, it is our responsibility to help the public and our members better understand the issues at stake in our upcoming federal election and where our candidates stand on business-related issues. We hope that by attending tonight's evening, you will be more informed when you vote on October 21st.
we should all give Marilyn here and her team, the directors at the Chamber of Commerce, they put a lot of work into this, to hold this forum for us, along with city staff, our communications team, Leona Esau, Jill Iverson and company. All a round of applause, please. So the candidates will be leaving the stage, exiting out and coming around. So as I said before, you're welcome to chat with them in the front foyer. We do have to kick everybody out about 9:15 though. That's the agreement for the rental, I guess. So again, thank you for a great evening. Good night and drive safely.